Hello my friends, how are you doing? I hope you have a beautiful day. This is my online course for the Sunset Magic Pack, and in this course I'm going to show you how to install the gradients in Affinity Photo, how to prepare to take amazing sunset shots, how to do basic editing before you apply the gradients, and then of course how to use the gradients creatively so you have the most effect from them. Okay, let's go for the first step, and that is installing the gradients. Now, I want to point out that to my knowledge, the iPad version cannot install gradients, so this is for the desktop version only. Okay, the first thing we want to do is to locate the swatches tab, and if you don't see that, you want to go to View and then Studio, and then locate swatches here and make a check mark next to that. Okay, so this should pop up this tab on the right side here on your screen. Have a look for it. It might not be up here, but when you locate it, click on it, and then you have these three lines up here. You want to click on those, and then you get this menu, and in the lower part it says Import Palette. And when you hover over that, you get as application palette. You want to click that because this will mean that you can use the palette for all your future documents, while the document palette only imports it for the single document. Okay, so click on that and then locate your folder. You download a zip file, unpack that zip file. In there is a folder with this palette, sunsetmagic.af palette. You want to click that and then click on open, and this will simply install the palette for you. And after you have done that, in your swatches tab, you have this pop down menu here. You can click here. There's a lot of different palettes in here, and one of them is called Sunset Magic. So that's very easy to find. Click on that, and then you have all these beautiful gradients here that are specifically made for sunsets. All right, now the next step, of course, is how to take a good sunset picture, or sunrise picture can also be. And this is not magic. This is simple science, and there is a very easy tool. You can see here, nice picture. And how do you take one of those? How do you know that the sun will be exactly at that location between the tree before you get there? Don't leave it to chance. Be professional about that. Have control over it, because this will enable you to take amazing pictures. Now, there's a very easy way to do that, and that is to get an app for that. So I've tried different apps. I found that Photo Pills has the easiest design to follow. This is a paid app, but there's also free versions, so I'm not saying you have to get that. It's just one of a suggestion of me, and we can have a look here. You can see it has an augmented reality feature where you see these lines where the sun is moving, where the moon is moving, and you can go to a location and then know 5 hours from now, 5 days from now, where will the sun exactly be at that time of day, and you can move it around, forward, backward in time, so you can see augmented reality align over the sky in your phone where the sun position is moving, so to give you exactly the position. So this is helpful, but what is even more helpful, if we switch over here, you can have a map which shows you also the movement of the sun again, and also for the stars, which is very nice. Another thing here that is very good is you have a lot of charts in here that are very helpful. For example, as you can see here, for exposure, for depth of field, hyperfocal, field of view, time lapse, spot stars, and a lot more stuff. For example, this one is nice here, star trails. If you want to create these star trails where they move over the sky, this is showing you exactly how long the exposure needs to be for that effect, specifically for your camera, for your lens, for your ISO setting. So that's pretty nice to have, and a lot of other stuff in here. And you can also have it for the iPad, and here you can see that you can see, for example, down here, blue hour when it's going to be in the morning, in the evening on that day, and the golden hour when it's going to be in the morning, in the evening. Perfect down to the minute, of course, so you can prepare, you can get set up, and then you know exactly where is the sun going to be. And as you have seen of the pictures, this is very important. Not only if you want to have the sun at a very specific location, for example, in the middle of that tree, but also here you have this lake photo, and you want to be on the right side of the lake to take the photo, not on the other side where you're not going to see the sunset. So for these reasons, these kind of apps are super good and make it very easy to take good sunset pictures. And a good picture, of course, is a very crucial, important part of editing a picture, because the better the source image is, the better the result is going to be of the editing. Okay, so now let's go to the next steps, and this is kind of prepping, kind of setting up the picture. So this is the original picture here without any kind of editing, and or like as I have downloaded it from Unsplash, no, from Pixabay in that case. Now, what you can do is to check your file for over and underexposed areas, and for this you want to select here your image layer, and then you can click here on your developer persona up there, and this will give you the ability. Up here you have these 3 fields, and they say show clipping highlights, show clipping shadows, and show clipped tones. Now, clipping in this histogram just means it hits the upper ceiling and goes above it, basically. So it tops out and there can't be any more values in there. Now, if you click, for example, on show clipped highlights, you will see there isn't really much. There's a little bit here. You see these 2 tiny red points. If I now raise the brightness, you will see I get more of these red areas. And this means in that case, if I turn this off, now we have pure white in here. There's no picture information in here whatsoever, and that is problematic. By the way, you also have these clipping functions in your camera, so you can check on location if your picture is clipping, if you need to change any kind of settings. And also you can have the clipping for the darker areas, which is here, the clipped shadows. So if I move up the black point, you can see now I get these blue areas in my picture. And this means in that area, it's pure black. There is no other information there. And this also means you can't save these areas because there is no detail information in here. If I turn this off, you can see this now is completely black. So that's not a good sign. This is something you can't edit afterwards. There's nothing inside there. And this is important, a crucial part you want to learn about photography, to avoid clipping with your settings, so you can afterwards edit it in a nice way. So sometimes you want to overexpose it a little bit to get more information in the shadows if the picture is going to be dark anyways, or you want to underexpose it if it's a very like bright location, or you have very bright areas in there, so you can save these parts. So this will give you a lot of important information, and also it tells you a little bit about how to edit the photo afterwards. So do these tests a little bit before you start to edit, and if you have a raw picture, you're going to start in the developer persona anyways, and these fields here, they are very helpful. Of course, this one here is for the colors that are clipping, and well, it's basically the same thing, but for the tones. So it says tones here. All right, let's cancel this and go back to our editing. I mostly like to use the photo persona for editing because here I have my adjustment layers and they are non-destructive. I can change them afterwards, which is good for the workflow, for the process, for this kind of artistic flow that you can change things around whenever you want to. All right. So I want to delete these layers here, and I want to go with you through some basic adjustments that we want to look at. Now, one of the crucial things we have seen before is the histogram. You want to look at that. You have it up here. You click on that, and there you can see in this case it's an RGB JPEG. So we have red, green, and blue as channels in our histogram showing up and showing us the values. This is like a statistical chart. Where are these values on what kind of brightness? So the left part is the dark values, the right side is the bright values, and you can see how many blue values are in the brighter and the darker areas. Same for red and green. How are they spread throughout the image? And this can help you adjust the image. This can help you understand what is going on in the image. All right, so for example, you can see here there's not a lot of stuff going on in the darker areas. And when you look at the picture, indeed, you can see that none of these colors, or very few of them, are actually black. Most of them are like a brighter gray. So we can adjust the contrast here, and you want to still adjust it in a safe way. And with the brightness, it's hitting pretty much the side here, the brightest values. So that's okay. We probably don't need to make it brighter, but you can still play around with that. And this is some information you get from the histogram. If you don't see the histogram, again, go to View and Studio, and then locate histogram and make sure that you make a check mark next to that. And this goes basically for everything. Every kind of thing you want to see, you will also find it in Studio. That are these kind of tabs over here. Good. So what are the adjustment layers we want to look at? Now, here are some basic things you will probably gonna use a lot for basic adjustments in Affinity Photo. The first one is levels. Levels is very nice because first of all, it includes an histogram where you can again see this kind of information. And the good thing is you have now here your black level, your white level, and your gamma. And when I move the black level, you can see that I have a line that exactly shows me what is going on in my histogram. Where am I hitting these values? So there's not much guesswork included. I have a really good overview of what is happening here. So I can, for example, in this case, move them in until they hit the starting point here. And then if I move them further, I'm kind of start on losing values in my image because they are turning completely black instead of having information here. So probably you want to keep it here in that area. And on the white side, it's actually already there. If you want, you can move it in a little bit, but you don't really have to in this kind of image. And the gamma value will make everything in the picture brighter and darker. You can see here, this only addresses the darker areas, not the brighter areas. And now if I move this around, you can see that this actually adjusts all the areas at the same time. So this is kind of a different setting, basically for the brightness of the picture, the gamma, right? And these are the main settings here. You also have the output black level, the output white level. They are kind of different, or the opposite of what you have done before, because the output black level will limit the maximum darkness of the black. So the more you move this over, the brighter it gets, while the more you move this over, the darker it gets. The reason for that is that you say, what can be my maximum black? And now if you say my maximum black in the picture can be a light gray, then of course nothing in the picture can be darker than that bright gray. So you can set this up here. But these are more advanced settings also for the output white level. And this is also this is more for printing, I would say, where you don't want to have areas that are completely dark or completely white. So you can move this in a little bit so you know absolutely sure that there will be something in there. So if I limit the white to 97%, nothing in the picture can be 100% white. So these are some basic adjustments you can do. I will set this back for the moment, and we can leave this as is with these tiny adjustments we have done here. All right, good. Another thing that is very helpful, that's different, is the curves, which you will also often use. Again, we have a histogram in here. Now this works in a different way, because the beauty of this setting is that, like it says, I have a curve where I can address all of these values basically individually based on the curve. So you can see if I move this down, I move this more than I move these areas because of the bend in here. And this, of course, in the middle is moving the most, but you can, of course, have this handle down here, and you can also have multiple handles here. So you can, over the spread of the areas from dark to bright, you can adjust them to your taste individually for exactly what you want to have happen in that area. So you can say, I want to keep the bright areas as is and just make the dark areas a little bit darker, or I want to also make the bright areas a little bit darker but keep the middle areas in the same value, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways you can play with that as a basic adjustment. And this also afterwards gives you a very nice way to adjust things in here. We can say, okay, let's for example, this S curve, when you pull this down and make a second one, pull this up, this is basically what contrast is. So you set up some contrast here. Another thing you can do that's really beautiful here is you can use the picker, click on that, and then click in an area. And now if I move my mouse up and down, it will adjust that area. So this is keying basically that area, and then make adjustments here. So I can say, well, I want to have this area darker, but then you can go with the picker down here and say, I want to have this area brighter. So you can see how this influences the picture. Now, because it is a curve, you can still see that this also influences the areas up here. And the more points you set, the more complicated it's going to be. So don't set too many points here. But this is a very, very useful adjustment. I will leave it blank for the moment. We will come back to that later. Another thing that you want to do in your picture is white balance. And this is a little bit up to technique. It's also a little bit up to taste, because with the white balance, what you can do is to create a neutral situation in your image where the whites are actually neutral white. But not always is this the right choice, because of course a photo is also about the emotion inside of a picture. Now, an easy way to use that is that you use the picker here, and you want to click with that not on a white value, but on a medium gray value. Of course, in nature, it's not often that easy to find an actual medium gray value, but you can click multiple times to see what kind of results you get. So there is no, because it's non-destructive, there's no wrong answer basically. You can just click here and you see what kind of results you get, and then you can click at another value and see if this changes. And you can also click at values that are not actually medium gray to see what kind of results you get from them, you know? So this gives you a lot of different ways to quickly adjust the settings in your image and see, how does it look? Does it look good? Do I get the results that I want to have? And of course, after that, you can still adjust that by hand to see, do I want to have it a lot warmer? Do I want to have it a lot cooler than that? So this is also, I mean, don't go too extreme, because then it looks very artificial. But if you make it a little bit colder, a little bit warmer than it actually is, this can really influence your image. And of course, you want to do this adjustment a little bit, because if you have more colors in here, the gradients can react better to them. So that is actually a pretty important adjustment. And again, because it's non-destructive, you can always go back here and do readjustments. All right, so now I want to show you two more things that don't have to do with color, but they have to do with the sharpness, which is important, and the clarity in the image. And these are two things that are a little bit complicated. Not complicated, but easy to do wrong. Okay, so let's first of all look at the sharpness. And one thing that is really important to point out here is that if a picture is blurry in a bad way, sharpness is not the way to make it sharper. Sharpness is more there to improve pictures who are already sharp, to make them a little bit sharper, a little bit crisper. So if the image is very blurred, maybe choose another image, is what I'm saying. Or you can use an AI software that will artificially create sharpness in the image, but the sharpness filters are mostly not made for that. And this is also why I want to suggest to you that you take multiple pictures at that occasion. Also bring a tripod for you, because sunset, sunrise is low light situation, so you want to have a stable situation. Maybe also set your camera on a self timer, so you don't have to press the button, or you have a remote control so you don't have to touch the camera when it's shooting the picture, because this will also create vibrations, and the vibrations will create blur in your image. Okay, so first of all, if you work with sharpness, what you mostly want to do is that you zoom into 100%. So you can click here on your zoom tool, and then you go up here and just select 100%, and this will show you how the picture actually looks. So again, we can go in here. First of all, you can see that my unsharp mask has attached to my white balance, which means it has no effect whatsoever. So you want to click on that and drag this up on top of your settings, or at least on top of all the image parts in your image that you want to sharpen, because this is sharpening all the layers below it. Good. Double click on that so you get that window, and then you can set up the pixel radius that this is affecting. And most of the time you're going to use 1 pixel for that, and you can go a little bit lower, you can go a little bit higher, but in most cases 1 pixel works great for that. And then also you can set the factor here, and the factor is how strong it is applied. And it might look good, especially if you're not zoomed in 100%. It might look good if you really push this up and the image looks a lot sharper, a lot crisper, but it also makes the picture very hard, as you can see here. So that is actually not a good setting. Try to stay in a value that is at maximum, I would say 1.5, and 2 is already stretching it a lot. So let's go maybe with 1 or 1.5. So again, in that kind of area here. Now, the threshold is what should be sharpened in the picture. Sadly, to my knowledge, in Affinity Photo, there is no way to preview that selection. So you have to basically go by feeling. You can leave it at 0%, which means everything is going to be sharpened, or you can move it up to see what kind of areas are going to be sharpened then. But here everything basically is a small detail, so this is not going to have a huge effect on that. Okay, and now another thing I want to talk about is clarity, which is also often used. And I often also see that people use that in a wrong way, where they use clarity as a sharpening tool, because it looks like sharpening. You see, when I put, oh, it's again, it again snapped to an adjustment layer. That's not good. So click and bring this up here. And then if you put more clarity, you can see that this basically clears up the picture, gets more structure. That can look nice in the sky because now you get these more dramatic clouds. But in the nature part, in the forest part, it makes things again very hard. They look metallic, they look grungy. It's just not a good look. It's this kind of hyper HDR look that is not ideal, because you want to have these kind of soft qualities, especially with the sunrise and the sunset in your picture. So if you use that, use it lightly, use it just a little bit on the areas where you think it's important, or just like at all in a rather low setting, you know, just a little bit of these adjustments in there if you need them at all. This is the important thing. And this is also, like I said, it's often used as sharpening, and then trees and foliage and fur of animals gets really harsh, really looks like metal afterwards. It's not a good look. Don't overuse that, just a tiny bit if you have to. All right, so after you have prepped your image to your satisfaction, so you have set it up to have a good look to start with, now we want to apply the gradients. Now, first of all, let's clarify what is the use of these gradients. Now, the idea behind them is that, of course, in a sunset, you can have a lot of different feelings. You can have a lot of different light situations. There's a lot of emotion in a sunset and a sunrise. It's like the color of the light, the way the light spreads to the landscape is kind of a melody, that kind of is a beautiful emotion that spreads throughout the landscape. And these light situations, of course, you can't always get all kinds of different light situations. So this is what this is for. And with this in mind, you want to apply that to the image. So first of all, what we want to do is to create a rectangle, of course, over all of the image, like so. And then you want to set this to soft light. And I make these a little bit bigger so we don't get any kind of clipping here. Sometimes you see a white line or something. If this is a little bit bigger than the original image, then you don't have a problem with that because you know that the gradient is going to be bigger than the original image. Okay, let's set this to soft light here. And then what we want to do is to go to our swatches layer and select Ollie Sunset Magic. And there you have these 60 different gradients in here, and you can click on them and you can adjust them. Now, the first thing you're realizing here that is really important is that now the gradient is going in the wrong direction because we have here blue and then orange and then a darker value here. And this is of course not how the sky is. So you want to rotate that. So go here to your gradient tool and then just click and drag this upwards, so you can just put this over the sky, and you can see that all of these gradients have 3 different values in here. If you want to create this in a straight line, you can hold your shift key and this will simply snap it, and then you can see I can move it up and down in a straight line, so all of these will be in one line that is going really down in 90 degrees. All right, now what you can see here is that we have these points here. Let's go again to the gradient tool, sorry. And you can use your mouse and move these around. So that is really important. So you can say, where do you want to have this orange part? Where should the blue part begin? You can move that up again. Use your shift key for that. You can also move it outside, not only of the picture, but also outside of your rectangle. So you can make the gradient a lot bigger than the part of the image. And this will help you to spread the light to different areas of the image. And you can also move this middle part around to have it wherever you want to be. Now you can see that this value, first of all, is too extreme. And also it spreads to the wrong areas of the image. So you can see these areas that should be darker here, they are now glowing red. Okay, how do we fix that? You want to first of all select your rectangle that you've created where your gradient is in, and then select this little cogwheel here on the side. And now you want to use the underlying composition ranges, because these are the ranges of the image that we see below. And you want to now take the left handle here and move it downwards, and then make a second point here and move that upward to your taste, on where you say, okay, this is how much I want to influence the darker areas. You can see here, observe the forest here in the background. If I move this over, you can see I have a lot of red values in my forest, but the more I move this to the right side, the less red values I have in the darker areas. You can beautifully fine adjust that, fine tune that. You can of course make here multiple points here, so you can go as precise as you want to. If you left click on the line, it creates a new point. If you right click on the line, it removes that point. And right now, also this is important to point out, this is a straight line, but if you unhook linear here, this is turning into a curve. So you can really beautifully fine adjust this here, and you can see the linear version and the curved version have different kinds of applications here. So the linear version, if I set this point up here, is going really straight to the top, and I have to put this really down to get a smooth curve over here, which of course gives me a smoother fall of these kind of areas. So that is nice. But at the same time, if I want to keep this that straight in the darker area, but not so much here, I could either create a second part here, which creates this kind of curve, or I can switch over to the linear part, which simply gives me the ability to have the values here still be not that extreme, the line not going up that far, that's fast. So you have to play around with that and see how good these results work for you and for the individual picture, because of course it's based on what is in the picture that gives you the information on what kind of settings you need to do here. One more thing I want to point out here, of course, This is working the same as the curves, as the levels, as the histogram. Always remember, always keep in mind, the left side is the darker areas, the right side is the brighter areas. If you know that, you can use a lot of different tools a lot easier. Like I said, like levels, like curves, like this one. There's also other tools that use that. All right, so now that we have set this up, this already looks a lot more natural. Another thing you can, of course, do is to use the opacity to reduce the effect. Do I want to have it 100%? Do I want to have it less? You can only give it a little touch if you want to. So there is no need to go super extreme and have super bright colors in your sunset. If you want to have that, that's okay. But if you just want to add a little bit of a touch, you want to keep it very natural, but just a hint of more beautiful light, then you can also do that by just reducing the opacity a bit. Okay, let's keep this at 75%. And now the beauty of this pack is that I can simply click now through these 60 different gradients in the Pro version. I can see I can try out a lot of different looks. There's a little more violet, there's a little more orange here, again a stronger violet here. So there's a lot of different kind of light situations. Also, I have created some where the orange is coming in the upper part. So you can see here now, this is more in the upper part of the sky, while the lower part stays blue in the image. And you can also, as you can see, move these points around where you want them to be. Move this down here. So you have a lot of freedom using that. That is really, really beautiful to have these abilities. And another thing here, this blue is a little bit too extreme in that case. For example, let's use this value here, which is a little bit softer. And you can see now I spread this down here, so most of the sky stays in this kind of soft pinkish hue. And down here we start with that area that we can then stretch downwards. You can see this area is outside of the picture. So very, very, very flexible. And another thing you can do here, this is also the beauty of gradients, is of course you can switch over the gradients. Now these are all linear because usually the sky, the horizon is in a linear fashion, but that might not always be the case depending on the subject in your image, depending on what kind of adjustments you want to have in your image. And for that reason, you can also go here to the type, and then you can adjust this and say, for example, I want to have it elliptical or radial, conical, or you can choose between these options. When you go with elliptical, one thing I want to also point out here is an important thing to know. Right now, if I move these, you can see both arms, this arm and this arm, move at the same time, and this also confused me very much at the beginning. The reason for that is because these both angles are locked. So you want to click on this little lock here, and now I can move this and this individually. And as you can see here, if you observe the middle part of the image, this turns it into an ellipse. So you can see here now we have here this blue area, while around that we have this orange area. Let's zoom in a little bit, maybe you can see it better. And so that means I can now go in here, and let's stretch this out a little bit more. Whoops, okay, that was not the right move here. You have to like hit the handle. If you don't, it's gonna go in the wrong direction. So you can see here now that we have this blue area in the middle, on top, and in the lower part, and then the corners are getting more of this orange value. And here's the kicker. What you can also do is you can click on this area here, up here, this field where you see the gradient, the preview of the gradient. You can click on that, and you have more settings in here, and you can also click here on reverse gradient. So suddenly these 60 gradients turn into 120 gradients because you can just reverse them, and then also into these other versions. So with the elliptical and the radial, so you have hundreds of different gradients you can use. Now look at what happens. If I click reverse, suddenly the middle part has this orange hue, this pink hue, and the outside is darker from the value. So this is also very nice because this can give you kind of a vignette effect in your image and can make it more center focused. And you can see how this changes the feeling and the nature of the image. Again, let's reverse this. So this is the middle part. looks a little bit maybe unnatural. We want to do more adjustments for that. And the outer part, that looks pretty good. So, but you can see how much this changes the nature, how much this changes the feeling, the personality of the landscape. I would say with this one, it's going outwards. It looks really big. It's kind of opening up towards you. It's kind of this wide, open, dreamy landscape. And if you reverse it the other way around, because it's center focus, you're getting kind of sucked into the image, but at the same time, everything feels a little bit closer, a little bit compressed, a little bit intimate also. So you can really formulate what the landscape, what the sunset, what kind of emotion it carries. So there's a lot of beautiful things you can do with this pack on your images. And again, you have all these gradients. So now, even now that I have made these settings, I can switch over. No, wait, actually I can't. This is one of the downsides in Affinity 4. I'm sorry I have to tell you this. If you now click on another gradient, this is switching back to linear. And it's also, it keeps the orientation, but it's just switching over back to linear. So I can click on one setting here and then just switch over to elliptical and have the same settings as before. So that's kind of nice. I probably also have to reverse that. Yeah, so, well, these are a little bit of the software limitations, but it's like 2 extra clicks, so that's not too bad. I'm still happy with that. Okay, that was my online course on how to adjust your images. You can see you can be super playful with that. And to show you some of the results, let's go in here and just click through them, because this picture is like ideal for these kind of light situations. You can see how nice it is to play around with that. Also, here you can see this upside down version where around the sun it's blue, and then upside here it's orange, which gives a beautiful, nice contrast for the sun. So sometimes the wrong colors are the right colors, because it just gives you a beautiful artistic expression and a nice feeling in the image. So yeah, it is really up to you. It's the photo world is your oyster, as they say. Yeah, it's just nice. I love these colors and the values and the kind of playfulness for this set. I hope I helped you with my little online course to be creative and use this set of swatches of gradients to its maximum potential. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in my other tutorials, and of course in my live streams, and of course in my Facebook group. Thank you very much for being part of all these amazing things, and see you around. Bye.